Hey guys, welcome to this video. Thanks for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome, and welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I'm kind of in the process of waiting for my computer to warm up, and I just have so many places I could go with this energy update. I want to talk a little bit about grid points. I want to speak a little bit on the energies that I've been experiencing in friendships, our connection points with each other, and I want to speak a little bit on, so much. I'll explain why I'm feeling all of this in just a moment. And I want to speak a little bit on healing modalities. So we'll see how much. This will probably be part one. I'll probably end with the healing modalities and the changes that are happening with that. This may be a three-part video. We'll see how I feel. The first thing I want to talk about is the energies that I've been experiencing over the course of the last week. So thanks for sharing in this now moment with each other. I'm unpacking so much that it's a constant process of unpacking. And ultimately it becomes less unpacking and it becomes more of just being in a space of stopping and smelling the roses and recognizing where I'm at in the now moment rather than trying to figure out everything that's coming in. Going within introspection, mole has been a power animal that's come up for myself and a few of my friends as well in the last week. In addition to Black Panther, and I used the totem animals and the power animals quite frequently in order to recognize what's showing up for me in my reality sometimes if I feel a little confused or I have questions, and sometimes it's just fun to work with the animal energies since we are all connected to these energies. And I connect in with my kind of shaman roots, right? So the grid points. I see us all as nodes and crystal lattice work, and we are each of us holding a space or within our DNA complex a vibratory experience filled with memories. I guess I'll talk about patterns as well. I talked about this in my previous video. And I was shown this week this connection to many different patterns. Old patterns had come up for me from my past, but I was really gifted with the opportunity to recognize that they were showing up for me. And I could either react to them, I could respond to them with reactivity, or I could respond with responsibility and compassion, and recognize that I could get sucked into the energy of the past that was connected to this, or I could just allow that to kind of settle and to reorganize and not get scattered and pulled into emotions or charge from a particular situation, person, place, or thing in which was showing up for me again in my reality now, so that I could be more of an observer, if that makes sense. I'm not giving a specific example because I'm trying to stay as multi-exampled as possible. So let's say we had a conversation with a family member. Let's say it was something that we have had come up for us over and over and over again over our lifetime. And in the past, it's just a cycle. It keeps repeating itself. It's a relationship. It's a work situation. It's drama in the workplace. It's family drama. It's a conversation that continuously comes up once we think we've worked through it. And this showed up for me as an echo of the past. And I was really asked in several circumstances to recognize that it wasn't. It held a charge still for me. It held a trigger. It held a gift. However, on the flip side, I recognized that it no longer was relevant for my expansion. It was no longer an experience that I needed to fold into, that I needed to have as part of my recipe. And I could separate myself from it and say, you know, I'm done. I have feeling around this. I'm integrating that feeling right now, and now I'm good. It was literally that quick. Now, as we become more and more aware of this, that was, let's say, a process that I went through. I had a frustration about something, It was an old pattern that showed up for me again in a different example of the same pattern. I had some ego that came up from it. How many of us have experienced this? I recognized that I could get angry over it, and I could possibly win or assert myself in such a way that I would get my way about something that I might have wanted a year ago. But I had the opportunity to recognize that I don't necessarily need that anymore, nor do I want it anymore in the same way that I once wanted or thought that I needed it. And I'm not giving an example specific, because let's fill in the blanks. If you can relate, is there something that you might have thought you wanted? Now you're being gifted the opportunity to assert yourself about that. And all of a sudden you realize, yeah, I'm right. Yes, this situation isn't necessarily, but it's not worth fighting for anymore, because the fight isn't there. The need to experience it in the way that I might have wanted to experience it a year ago is no longer there. It's no longer relevant. And so what holds in that example is a charge that's left over from, one might call it residual. So I had some residual stuff, some feelings and a little ego in there, like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't the right way to handle things. But then I thought, wait a minute, or is it? At this point, does it matter? And I came to the conclusion, no, it doesn't even really matter anymore. And that gave me an opportunity to work through some things that had been perhaps lingering, that I didn't even recognize were lingering. Now, from one perspective, that was a process. I felt it, I observed it, I let it run its course through my body. I didn't deny that I felt frustration or anger around it. Anger wouldn't be the appropriate word, but more frustration. And then it was gone. I was thought, well, you know what? It doesn't matter anymore. And when I did that, I went through that whole journey and I went through that whole process, I felt kind of just clear about it. And it is what it is. It doesn't hold a charge for me anymore. And a solution was presented to me that maybe isn't the solution I would necessarily want from an egoic perspective, but it might be a better solution than what I might see from that egoic perspective. And so my thought was, it's time to just trust that there is something better in this, because I'm able to integrate this and not get sucked into the emotion, not get sucked into the past lingering memory or attachment to a particular outcome that would really be what I thought I needed. I'm just giving this an example, fill in the blanks. So that was something that came up for me. From another perspective, we are finding ourselves getting into that point where it just doesn't even trigger us anymore. All of a sudden we come into that space and we go, yeah, I could see how that might be unfair or not necessarily where it would, I could see where it would fit in to an old reality, but at this point it doesn't even matter. And so we don't even feel the charge. We observe it as an observer, as a part of what we may have, or how we may have responded. And that can be a very valuable moment too, because then we see it and we go, okay, I feel what might have been, it's no longer, and we move through it very quickly. And then there's another perspective and another layer where it rolls off. It's not even a part of our reality because we're out creating it. So there's different layers. I did not out-create it. I obviously allowed it to come back into my awareness so I could create something different around it, which could be a form of out-creating it. But when I think about creating something, it just doesn't even come into our field anymore, because the energy that we're utilizing around a particular person, place, or thing no longer pulls in the past cycle or habit pattern. Does that make sense? I hope so. So we're all at these different stages. And when I say we're at a different stage, it doesn't mean that we're at a completely different stage of development. It means moment to moment, we're having that different stage. One moment we might be out creating something. Another moment we might be integrating and processing. Another moment we might get sucked in and not recognize we're sucked in until after it's already happened. And we're being gifted certain circumstances in order to show us the way in which we are interacting with our environment, with our reality, with each other, so on and so forth. We had a lot of solar activity this last week. I had the pleasure of connecting with a sister and friend of mine, Jess Maytree from Yothera, and we kind of explored Florida a little bit, and it was really special. She spent the week with me, and we participated in some activities such as grid work, which I would like to talk about if I have time in this. My computer is updating, so this will be part one. Maybe I'll get into that in this next video, because I do think it's important. The two subjects I'd really like to get into is grid work and my version of it, as well as healing energies and some perspectives that I have to offer on both of these. So we'll get into that. So we were able to participate in connecting with the earth. We were able to participate in creating some workshop plans. We were able to essentially, what it feels like when you connect with someone that's in your soul family, part of your tribe, and you come together, it literally is similar to when two or more gather. When we are combining our frequencies in person, it is incredibly powerful. It can be very ungrounding. It can be very grounding. I had a little bit of both. I'm still unpacking the frequencies and energies and memories and activations that we both shared in our own unique individual way. So this is happening for more and more of us. And this is why it's so important for us. You know, I've had sessions with beautiful light workers who feel very alone. And sometimes they realize it and sometimes they don't. Sometimes I sense in their field this sense of loneliness or isolation. Other times I sense a feeling of overwhelm and there's too much going on and they're pulled in all of these different directions. And part of what's going on right now is really us finding our balance and harmonizing with ourselves. And then also, though, branching out. So there's this idea that we are alone and that nobody gets us sometimes. And I've been there, done that, you guys. It's part, I think, sometimes of our journey as some of us have chosen to have that experience. And that can be very valuable. And I'm naturally a hermit. It took a lot for me just to get on here and do a YouTube video. And to share all the things that I've shared over the course of the last several years has been massive for me. It's been big, right? So it took me getting out of my comfort zone. And part of what we're being invited to do is get out of our comfort zone. Yes, we need to find comfort with ourselves. But once we do that and we establish that, we're really being invited to create. And we are creating just by being here, whether we do it consciously or not. But we're being invited to share with each other in community. Now, not everybody wants to do this, and that's okay. That's their choice. That may be what inspires them. They may just have come here to live in a cave or be in their home and just that's their space. But there's a larger group of individuals who are seeking community. And that community can come from many different areas, many different people, and it doesn't have to look a certain way. So I just wanted to kind of share that. I tend to be a little bit of an introvert, even though I don't seem like it. I tend to only have a tight-knit group of friends, and that's how I've always been. I recognize within myself that when I collaborate, though, with another brother or sister, it does, wow, so many things. It enhances and it extends my fields. It becomes this interactive communication with one another, and we then send that out as a ripple effect into our reality, into the space around us, into the earth, with other people that we come into contact with. And so whatever we need to do in order to feel able to express ourselves or just connect with another human being, I think is important for a lot of people right now. So that might involve, I've had sessions where I've seen people that may benefit from a particular activity. So I might work with someone and say, have you thought about joining a book club? Because I can see that they are an introvert. They really enjoy reading, right? And it might benefit them to discuss what it is that they are learning about in that type of environment in order to then feel a connection point, which is where I'm going with this next, to establish a sense of embodiment and grounding through that interaction. So for example, let's say we read a book and it's in our imagination and we have all these thoughts around this particular book, and we have a couple of other people who may be interested in that book as well. We join the book group and this person discussed one part of it, another person discussed another part of it, and we have all of these ahas that we didn't even recognize maybe when we read the book on our own. That's an example of what I'm talking about. The gift of me having these friendships with people who I mention all the time in these videos is having this explorative, I know I make up my own words, but it doesn't matter. This exploration in how we interact with one another and the ahas that each of us provides for each other, whether it be in social media, whether it be in person, whether it be through joining a club, whether it be going to a yoga class, is really powerful right now. So that's the other common theme that I've been seeing in the Starseed community is collaboration. It's time, guys. I have been called to collaborate for 2 years now, and I am one of those that just drags. I'm what is it called? A late bloomer, right? I get into a resistance about that, and that's okay, because I recognize for me it's all about timing, and it's all about me focusing on my own energies before I collaborate with someone else, because we are being called to get our own act together before we get pulled into another person's vortex. So there is this fine line. Find our vortex, then find our soul tribe. It isn't about seeking someone outside of ourselves necessarily to then find our vortex, although that can help us on both ends. We can get sucked into someone else's field and start creating from their space, creating a reality that they see as valid. And we can get lost in that and then find ourselves when we recognize that isn't necessarily the reality we want to create from. But if we can do it from the space of feeling and being present, then that's less likely to happen. And even though that's a very valid and valuable way to experience and learn from each other, it could possibly be more productive for us energetically if we're not giving our energy away and giving our power away to someone else's reality before we learn that that's what we're doing. Although sometimes that's what we need to learn. That's what we need to experience so that we recognize what that feels like. Do you see where I'm going with this? There's just so much. I've done all of those things, by the way, before I came to my space where I went, this is where I want to create from. I still dip into all of those spaces and I still collaborate, but I try to do it from a place of integrity and using my own inner guidance system, my own inner intuition. And I've done so much work on myself that, and taken the time to get to know my own for the most part, directive, I guess, that I feel when I'm being pulled into someone else's directive. And it feels I can be in resistance to that. Maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe it's not something that I need to work with that person. Maybe it's just, and these are all things I'm bringing up because we can help each other recognize this within ourselves. Sometimes it's I'm not in my own field, I'm not in my own center, so that I'm unable to find my center. And so sometimes we turn to someone else to help us find that center, and then we recognize we never needed that in the first place necessarily. But on the flip side, that need to connect with someone else helped us realize that we had it in ourselves all along. You guys, it's so interactive, and there is no one way. This is what my guides keep saying over and over again. I know I'm all over the place, but that's what the energies are right now. So we're getting help from the earth, we're getting help from each other, we're getting help from the sun. Let's talk about the grids just a little bit, and then I'll go into this a little deeper in the next video because I'm running low on time. I see us as connection points. So as we make these connection points with each other, but we also make these connection points in ourselves. We connect with our ancestors. We connect with our soul tribes. We connect with our galactic brothers and sisters. We connect with our roots. Okay, all of it. So multidimensional. We then create a grid point, or let's say a point in the grid system of the overlay and the weaving of realities. And again, this will be on the second video. I'll go into that a little deeper. So recognizing what temperature we're holding within that grid point assists us in acknowledging what frequencies we are interacting with, what we are providing for the grid and for each other, for ourselves, and how we are integrating, and how it is that we are connecting with the entire picture as well as source energy and Mother Earth. So checking in, am I hot, am I cold, am I neutral? Am I feeling triggered, am I feeling despondent? All of these things are also starting to fade for some of us. We're not feeling any of those things. We're just feeling really neutral. But we're all at different points. But we're literally all at different points on the grid as well. So some of us are being drawn to certain areas and certain people that are helping us to balance or harmonize that frequency. And again, that might be on the next video a little deeper. I feel that this could be a really fun exploration. And once we stabilize that within ourselves, we then assist in stabilizing the new version of reality, the new earth, the new ley lines, the new everything. Okay, so that's just briefly what I wanted to tap into there. I talked about habitual patterning. I forgot the third thing I was going to talk about. Let me just pause and see if I can remember it. Healing. So that's, again, this will be on the second video, more detail, but many of us are questioning certain things. Many of us are coming into a different version of our own power. So the next video, maybe several videos, I'm going to talk about healing modalities and what those look like, and certain paradigms around those healing modalities that we're being invited to really observe and integrate. So that's something else that's been coming up a lot in my awareness. I've come into a new understanding of what it is that I'm doing in my healing modality. And I have yet to name most of the things that I do. I just call it energy integration. But there's, I'm sure, many fun names I could come up with. And of course, frustratingly enough for my human ego aspect, my guidance team has always been like, when I ask, doesn't matter. Who am I communicating with? Who is it that I'm channeling? What galactic energy are they from? It doesn't matter. For some people, it's very important for them to know that. It's very important for them to bring that forward because it's part of their roots and it's part of their heritage and it's part of what they came here to express in that way. For me, I'm just not that way. It's not something, I do feel very connected to Lyra and Andromeda and Inner Earth and Egypt and Lemuria, and I could go serious. That's part of the crux of all of this, right? It's like the crux, the Southern Cross, very connected to that as well, Cygnus. I have this tendency to be in all things. I feel very connected to everything. I also have connection to some of the things that I feel others might judge as negative or positive or that don't matter. All of it. You guys, we're all part of all of those things. So for me, my guidance team has always been very vague. And I understand why. If I were to fully understand, I know when I'm speaking certain light language where it's connected to, but I've been guided over and over again not to get hung up on that. So this also then morphs into what we're creating now. The labels are falling away. The identification and the identity is falling away and opening to other versions that are multidimensional. And you're going to hear these words a lot in the future. You're probably already hearing them. Multidimensional, identity, integration. We have all these hot words that many of the lightworker community all begins to speak at the same time, because most of us are we're feeling that particular energy come through strongly. And as far as the timing goes, depending on what it is that we are recognizing, remembering, or feeling into, becoming available to us, we're honing in on. I have certain friends and teachers, in the community that I will have pop into my awareness, and if I watch their video, it's something that I've been writing down for the past week. Then they'll share a video and it's exactly what I've been saying, and sometimes they say it better than I do. And it's awesome when that happens. It gives us human validation, but also it gives us, again, coming back to those connection points, it gives us an expanded view of what we're already tapping into. And where I take that may be different than who I'm listening to and where they've taken it. So that's something else to keep in mind. And I'll go into that with the healing modality video. So these connection points that we're making are being held and acknowledged in the physical, in the etheric, in the astral, in everything. And so recognizing that we are all the connection points and that we are all interconnected is so important. Moving forward, and I'll end on this note for this particular video, the messages that I get are primarily suggesting that the next level of awareness is already here. And navigating that level of awareness takes responsibility, and it takes a certain level of non-judgment and the ability to hold a greater capacity for patience, a greater capacity for compassion. A capacity, when I say that, means bigger space. We expand our capacity, our holding capacity. And that expands us. Our field gets bigger. And we're able to then process at a higher speed, which makes it it gives us a bigger advantage. It makes everything more advantageous. And that moves into adventurous. We are then able to have this greater sense of adventure on this journey. And it no longer holds us in a particular, back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video, habit pattern. We reorganize that which we may have been organized in before. We then shift it and we move out of what it was that we were used to operating within. Because, and I described this to my friend, it feels like we're in a skin suit and we're too big for it. Too big for our britches, right? we filled the shoes from one perspective, and it's like, where do I go from here? Where am I? What is this that I'm feeling? I feel not stuck. It's literally, I feel at times that the light is pushing out of my skin at such a intensity that it's almost, it's difficult to express. And from another perspective, it can't be expressed in a linear or human expression. So the best I can do is experience it as a human in this body. And that's what we're all doing. We are experiencing this multidimensionality within this framework, within this body, within this version of ourselves, yet this version of us is constantly shifting, morphing, and expanding. So at the rate that we're going at, it can be uncomfortable and exhilarating at the same time. So I'm going to end on that note. That's the energy update from my perspective. So I'm going to go into another video next, now that my computer's up and running, and share with you some more deets, go in a little deeper, and maybe go a little more explorative in some of the messages that have been coming through. So guys, we are expanding at an exponential rate and speed. Our senses are heightened. It's on. So again, the same message always: be patient with yourselves, be compassionate with yourselves. That then ripples out to patience and compassion with one another, for one another, and recognizing that the adaptations that we are in the process of adapting to takes time. It's a reconfiguration. And as we shift, move, it can be uncomfortable for everyone at times. And so it's a reminder that we truly are here together, right? So let's be compassionate in that togetherness for each other and hold that understanding, right? Okay. Whew. To be continued. Namaste.